Hello everyone, this is Shadow Dragon back with another episode of DCUO. So in this video I'm going to be doing my review of the Augments, and I think we're about 3 weeks in, or maybe it's a month. I haven't really kept track. But I just wanted to address the 4 points that I complained about while this was on the test server. So you can click on the card that should appear right here, or just check out the description below too. So actually I highly recommend that you're watching this on either YouTube itself or one of the apps, so that way you get the card and the description, because I'm going to be referring back to that initial video on the test server a lot. So first of all, overall, I do want to say that the positives are going to outweigh the negatives of the Augments. And I just wanted to mention that because this video is going to, like, the complaints are going to take up a lot of minutes because they're going to go into detail. But overall, it's pretty good. The one main thing is that there's no more modding. Like that pretty much outweighs everything I'm about to go over, but it's not totally perfect. And the other thing is, of course, it's the best move for the vast majority of the players, because we have a lot of people that are non-modders. This video probably won't be geared towards you, because if you're a non-modder, no matter what you did after Augments, your character is going to be improved. If you did it 100% the wrong way, your character is still going to have higher stats than before. And yeah, mainly in the health and power area as well, because like if you modded any old way, you're still going to get those two stats. So they simplified it by not giving us that option to mod for those two things. So everyone is going to have higher health and power no matter what. Yeah, so the majority of people are either non-modders or you modded in a single direction, which this system is much more like intuitive for. Okay, so these issues are going to go in the same order as my previous video. So once again, I'll stick in that card at this point so you can reference that. And a lot of these were addressed, so I'll just mention whether it was addressed or if it's still an issue. So the first thing that I brought up was that there was no room for error for these Augments. And that is still the case. Now the old modding system was a little bit more forgiving, because like if you changed your playstyle, or if you felt you did something wrong and you wanted to make an adjustment, all you had to do was remove one mod and pull out whatever bytes made it up. You could get the bytes on the broker, easily farm the parts back, and remod it. So, well, I guess we can't look at the old system anymore, but this is the best representation of it if we look at this, just a regular inventory menu. So like if you did the helmet wrong, just pull that out, and you might just not have the stats for a little while you're getting those pieces back together. But it wasn't hard, I mean, towards the later episodes, you did have to like get the essences and stuff again. But again, like it's only one piece out of a total of 10, so it was doable. And then to represent the new system, we'll look at this. So the way this is set up is the 4 at the bottom are pretty much your permanent parts. So the issue here is, like, once you assign the golden exobytes to these 4, like that's pretty much it. If you changed your mind, like you would have to refarm from 0 to whatever the golden exobyte gave you, and that is a heck of a grind. The two at the top are kind of like you could change your mind on these, and you wouldn't take too much of a loss if you didn't rank it up yet, because the way the top two work is you get higher stats to begin with. Like when these are not ranked up at all, the stats already start out high. The bottom ones are the opposite. They start out low and they rank up with higher stats. The two top ones are going to change with every DLC. So, you know, if you change your mind, probably the best time to do it would be the next DLC. Like for example, Alyssa is split between precision and might on the two top ones. Like if I wanted to go full precision, then next DLC would be the best point to do that with the least amount of loss. But yeah, the room for error is it's definitely worse in the augment system. But yeah, I don't know how many people that would affect, because you know, once again, if you're a non-modder, this does not affect you. But if you're a modder, I guess one thing I'm curious about is when you transitioned from mods to augments, did you try to replicate the same exact build as you had before? Or did you take this as an opportunity to change direction? So yeah, let me know in the comments if that pertains to any of you out there. Alright, so issue number 1 was not really addressed. Like that's, I mean, it's still, they could still go back and find some way to kind of convert one to the other without like a loss. You know, because like right now for these bottom pieces, if I changed my mind and wanted one of these to be might, my might would be 0. It would be rank 0 to begin with, and I don't even know how long that would take to build back up. Okay, the other issue number 2 is the flexibility of the builds. So once again, using this menu to represent the old system, you had 10 slots. Each one carried up to 2 stats with a socket affinity bonus. So you could actually consider that 30 different stats that are converting down to 6. So 30 slots converting to 6. Now with the old system, because it had, you know, 30 different stats that were changing, you could have like a really, really precise build and a very well-rounded character, especially if you used mixed mods in all of them. So this is for like a custom character where you're filling in for a playstyle. Like if you're missing a little bit of health, you could add some health. If you're going for a survivability build, you could put a little bit of everything in there. So these are the types of builds that you would kind of do for fun or for just to match your playstyle. And if you're the type that was going for like solo and large content, you would definitely have a custom type build, because you wouldn't be one way or the other. As far as like damage and support, you would be like somewhere in between for everything, and you'd be using mixed mods for everything. So you could do that in a more granular way using the old system. The new system, back to this diagram of the 6 slots, is a little bit less granular, because if we assume that all of these are equal, you're kind of dividing it into 6 instead of 30. So you're going to be able to, you're going to hit like less percentages of each item stat, of each stat, if you're trying to like really split this up. But all in all, I would say this is a pretty minor issue now, because now that it's live, and I went through the trouble of like logging stats on multiple spreadsheets and everything, like I got this character as close as possible to what she was before. And due to the number of slots reducing, naturally some stats are going to be higher than others at launch. So I think the way it was, her precision ended up like a lot higher than before. The might was a little bit lower, and restoration that came from one or two mixed mods that were in like the yellow slot. Obviously you don't build an augment for that, like just because it's sort of like a tertiary or ancillary stat. So her resto started out a bit lower. But pretty much after I picked the 4 runes, assigned the goldens to those, and they gave us one of the cores, and then the other one we bought from the vendor. I think that's the... No, wait, they gave us 2 cores, and then for the other role you had to get the 2 from the vendor. but once I had these slotted in, and I threw in like whatever leftover legacy R&D items, all of Alyssa's stats ended up higher than before. So I guess percentage-wise things were off by a little bit, but as long as everything ended up higher, it kind of cancels out or remedies that complaint a little bit more. I mean, the lack of flexibility will always be there, but I think it's kind of covered up by the buff stats. Because like no matter what you did, your health and power was much higher than before. And then if you try to replicate your build, all the other stats should end up higher after the first day. Okay, so moving on to issue number 3, the launch. So this I still maintain as my opinion, that I didn't like how it was released the same time as content. Like I always believe the 2 should be released separately, in hopes of creating like a controlled experiment. Because before Titans we were in a holding pattern on Deluge. Like it's been out for a while, we were maxed out. It would have been a perfect opportunity to launch something different in the game other than content, and that would have been Augments. I think moving from mods to Augments is a pretty big change. It's almost on the level of a stats revamp. Not quite that big, but if you were a modder with a custom style, custom play style, it could have been that big for you, where it could affect you. So I just think it would have been better if we tested the change in the modding system on content that was already stagnant, because that way we wouldn't be powering up at the same time as changing the mods. But the way this was released, like the 2 things were moving up separately. Like you had the transition from mods to Augments, and then we were upgrading our gear from content. So any of the disparities between the 2 modding systems would have been hidden by the powering up of gear. And also obviously the content is different. Because like imagine if we were able to like switch to Augments, but not totally rank them up. Test Augments where they were equal to the mods on content we're used to. Then we would really know if this system was better or not. Whereas now you could say it's better, you could say it's worse, but it's kind of clouded by the content we're playing. So, I mean, it's obviously too late to patch that one up, but I would just hope in the future they don't do the same, where it's like a giant change to the gameplay, and then a change to content at the same time. Issue number 4, which is the reward for effort. I think this was partially addressed, and the more important part, what was addressed, and that was when they kind of decided what the starter pack would be for the transition. Initially on test, we were given 4 golden exobytes, which would basically catch one of our rolls up to where we were modded before. And there were a lot of complaints on the forums because a lot of people modded both rolls. So what this would do is basically give you one roll modded and the other would be completely blank. And that would have been pretty bad, I think, but when this went up, they did give us 8. So that's the half of this that was addressed, and that's like the most important half, because that would have been a huge grind to go back and try to mod for the role that was missing. I'm not sure what I would have done in that case, because that's not a situation where that a modder ever runs into. Because if you modded your main character at every tier, you were never at a point where one role was like 0. You would either have the old mods in there or be partially modded, at least. So I'm definitely glad they addressed that. And the other part about effort, which I don't have any more pieces here, I don't think, that kind of represent that, but it was the case where they just took all of the legacy R&D items and converted them to the same XP to be consumed by augments. So that pretty much means that an old, fully built Atlantean Royal mod is equivalent to the lowest bit, like a single bit. And a bit is the same as a byte, instead of like a byte being 8 times more XP than a bit. So all this is pretty minor, but if you go back and calculate the effort to build each of those, it does take away a lot from somebody who modded, and especially someone who modded both roles. Because you would have ended up with like 20 fully built mods, which represented a lot of effort, and in the most recent DLCs, that effort was logged by the essences and the feats behind modding all those, because I think there were like several steps, several feats and steps for modding up to, I believe, 10. And of course all of those feats were just awarded to everybody, but it would have been nice to see like a difference in XP for all the different components. But I think that also kind of circles back to the launch of this, where they were trying to get it out fast, probably. Because if you think about this database-wise, it just looks like they kind of selected all R&D and then applied the 20 XP to all of them, instead of like hand picking them. So this is another one that's too late to kind of circle back and fix, because people have already consumed stuff, and like if you fix it now, you'll get complaints the other way that people have already used them up and stuff. So not something they could circle back to. But another thing that would be good to consider in the future for any type of transition where you're converting one thing to another. Definitely evaluate the effort of the pieces you're converting, because a lot of players spent a lot of hours and money for replaying this stuff, so it's definitely important to reward on effort for veterans. Okay, so those were the 4 points that I mentioned in the other video. But this can't be like a total review of augments quite yet, because there are still some unknowns here. Let's see, what's the best representation here? I guess we can look at the pacing at where I am. So typically, I guess I kind of approach this the way I approached modding. This is Alyssa's battle tank role, and I typically kind of build this first before her full tank, but I don't build it fully. Like, I just build it to a point where the small content is somewhat comfortable. This is her solo/duo build. So you can see these are not like powered up all the way. But if we consider this like her 2 cores are ranked 9, the more complete is her tank. So after I get that to a comfortable level, then I'll just concentrate fully on the tank roll, because that's what I'm using for alerts and raids. And her tank roll is more of a single direction, where it's not as mixed as the battle tank. So both of these are dominance up here. Something else to note, like, since we're not building health anymore, the dominance mods are basically health, because they're going to have higher health. So just throwing a small tip in there. But getting back to the modding, the pacing of this is one of the unknowns here, because we can't fully have an opinion on this until the end of this DLC to see if we complete this or not. We should be able to complete, or at least on a personal level, if I don't complete both roles, everything fully ranked up, then I would say this system is not better than modding, because after every DLC I was fully modded on both roles. So we can't tell the pacing of this until afterwards. But right now, let's just say it's a month in, and I did miss that first day, the launch day, because I was concentrating on kind of getting my characters right rather than running content. So if you assume I missed the first cycle, I have 2 of these at 17. The other 2 are at 9. So if you're a player that was just kind of building one role, you might have these maxed out already, or pretty close to it. And then these over here, a large factor for the runes is if you critted or not, because if you didn't crit, these would be like in the 190s, but if you critted, these would be, I guess, up to 205, because I had 205 on Takesis. And it's actually a bit of a grind between 193 and 205, like several weeks, I'd say. But so far, like, the pacing of these, the runes seem to be okay, because you don't have a breakthrough bottleneck for these 4 bottom ones. The top ones, in my opinion, they felt comfortable up to rank 15, because when you hit that first breakthrough, like, I felt like I had enough materials for them. But oh wait, let's see if I could bring that up. That would be the rank up menu. So if we look at this cybernetic core, yeah, once you break through at 15, you're surprised by a second breakthrough at 18. So it's kind of weird, because it's a long grind from 0 to 15, and then all of a sudden you're hitting 18 right away, and you're already out of these catalysts. So this is kind of a bottleneck. And you are going to hear this a lot on the community, from the community, and it's also on the forums probably. But these catalysts, do I have them up? Yeah, here we are. These three here are what we need. They just don't seem to drop often enough that when we reach the time to rank up that we'd have them. Because even with the initial breakthrough, I did one right away, and I had to play a couple of days to get the second one. So it's the two you need for the first two breakthroughs are Changeling and, is it Tamaran or is it Changeling and Azarathine are the two earlier ones, and then this one I haven't hit yet, but I think it's for the last step. And just to prove the frequency of each of these, we're gonna look at the broker prices. So this will give you an idea of how often they drop. So you can see that the Azarathian one is in the millions to begin with. Same case with Changeling, so they're about equal. And the Tamaranian one is so much lower. I mean, the other factor is these are dropping in the same places as the others, but you won't need this till later, so I don't know, maybe people are just blindly selling them cheap. But I mean, these are a lot of entries, so they must be dropping more often. Whereas the other two, people are hitting those points faster, and they're just not dropping fast enough. Because these are random drops in the new content. They're not fixed daily / or weekly drops coming from the content like they were how the older catalysts were set up before the Constantine vendor. So they are going to have to probably increase that at some point. Hopefully they're monitoring these on their actual traffic stats, because obviously the broker is a very rough estimate, but it does tell you that those two are more rare. The other topic about the pacing that we don't know about, so this is sort of an unknown also. These two top slots are going to change with every DLC. So the unknown here is what stats they will begin with, because these are going to be fully, or hopefully fully, powered up by the next DLC. Will the two new ones pick up where these are maxed out? Or will it be lower? Because I think at no point should our characters have to lower their stats for new content. So that's a question mark. We don't know how that's going to work out. But something to point out related to that is that the core augments can consume each other. So if you're on this menu and you select one of these, and then you have to select one that's not at a breakthrough, obviously, you will get the other ones that are not equipped. So right now you could do this by mistake. Just be careful. MEPS mentioned on the forums that they are working on a safeguard to lock these. So until then, be careful. But it's probably made this way because we're replacing these for the next DLC. So when that comes out, we're going to be buying those from the vendor, and I guess we're consuming these into that. So the combination of the starting stats for the next core ones, plus however much it gains from consuming one DLC back, like that total has to be higher. Otherwise, I would say the system is broken. But you know, that's an unknown. We're not going to know that until the next DLC is on test. Okay, so I think that's going to conclude my review of the augments. I do think they're very good overall. It seems to be good for the game and the majority of the players. But I just hope that feedback from here makes it into future releases and future features. Okay, that's it from here. Let me know how you're doing with your builds and your transition, and if you like this system better. Okay, that's it from here. Thanks for watching.